In Aesthetics, lecture on fine art, Hegel emphasized that the intrinsic contradiction in art lies between its material form, art as a tangible physical product, and its spiritual concepts, the ideas and emotions it seeks to convey. Additionally, in What is Art, Leo Tolstoy highlights the conflict between the artist's intentions and the social role of art when art is viewed through the lens of morality and society. Furthermore, in Art Power, Boris Groys argued that art always exists between two opposing poles, autonomy and dependency. These theories share a common point. They are all address the contradiction within art, suggesting that contradiction is an inherent aspect of art, or in other words, that contradiction is an essential element of art. This essay examines the contradiction in art, including visual contradiction, material contradiction, and contradiction with traditional biases, created by artworks to understand better how constructing contradictions within art can expand viewers' perceptions. While the primary context of this study is Vietnam, it does not exclude references to the global artworks. Currently regarded as a developing country, Vietnam is seeing growing interest in the arts, making it an especially intriguing place for study. Here, art is actively working to challenge traditional preconceptions, aiming to foster a higher level of awareness and understanding of art. To address the research outline, how have contradictions in visual art affected public perception in Vietnam from 2020 to the present? This essay will begin in Chapter 1 by exploring the theoretical and conceptual foundation of contradiction and perception. It will draw upon Boris Groys' concepts of perfect balance through contradiction in art and Barry Maund's introduction to theories of perception. Additionally, the essay will examine how contradiction broadens perception through the perspectives of Dieter Wandschneider and Alexander Luria. In Chapter 2, the role of contradiction in art will be addressed, followed by evidence and analysis of contradictions in the works of international artists Nicolas Lamas and Vietnamese artists Nguyễn Việt Cường and Nguyễn Mạnh Hùng after 2020. Their works will be observed and evaluated for their impact on the public's perception achieved through contradictions in visual forms and materials. From this, the essay aims to reassess the significance of contradiction in general and in art. Contradiction is often understood as a conflict or opposition in thought, character, and viewpoints. However, contradiction also entails unity and struggle between opposing aspects. To further support the concept of contradiction in art, this essay draws on Boris Groys' theory of perfect power balance through paradox in artworks. In Art Power, Groys explained that very contradiction between art's autonomy and the way powerful institutions shape it create a perfect balance. Theoretically, art is seen as an individual creative act, independently of social and political constraints. However, in practice, art is always dependent on institutions such as museums and the art market and the media for recognition, exhibition, and value assignment. This contradiction allows art to avoid being fully assimilated by the power system, while still being unable to completely separate from it. Because art always stands between two opposing poles, it has the capacity to critique and reshape the very structure of power that surround it. Additionally, Boris Groys introduced the concepts of paradox object to describe the inherent contradiction of modern and postmodern artworks. Groys suggests that modern, including contemporary artworks, are paradoxical objects because they are both material objects, tangible physical products that can be displayed, and immaterial entities carrying meaning, concepts, or ideas. This creates a fundamental paradox. On one hand, an artwork can be seen as an independent object, a material entity that can exist on its own, produced and consumed like any other commodity in the market. On the other hand, it is not merely a simple object, as it carries conceptual value, meaning, and complex layers of interpretation. Its value does not lie with its physical nature, but in the cultural ideas and values it represents. This makes an artwork both concrete and abstract, existing in the real world while also occupying the realm of thought and symbolism. Another contradiction Groys identifies is the conflict between meaning and form in artworks. In many cases, the physical form of an artwork may be very simple or even mundane, like an everyday object, while the meaning is conveyed is profoundly complex, deep, and philosophical. In summary, according to Boris Groys, artworks in the modern and postmodern eras exist as paradoxical objects containing intrinsic contradictions in their nature, value, and role. They are both material objects and abstract ideas. They represent creative freedom yet are controlled by power institutions. They are simple in form but complex in meaning. These contradictions make artworks complex, powerful entities that continue to challenge traditional definitions. Therefore, contradiction is one of the most important elements of an artwork. In perception, Maund presents the concept of perception not merely as the process by which sensory organs transmit information about the external world to the brain, but as a study of relationship between what humans perceive and objective reality. Maund defines perception as the process by which humans experience the world through the senses, such as sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. However, perception is not simply the collection of raw sensory data. It also involves interpreting and organizing this information to build a model of external world. According to him, perception is also the process of associating these phenomena with specific objects in the environment. For example, when people see a table, they do not just see its color, shape, and position. They recognize it as a table and an object that with properties and functions within their world. Maund argues that this makes perception an interpretive process, where the mind plays a crucial role in shaping how humans understanding sensory information. Maund asserts that perception has both subjective and objective elements. Perception is subjective because it relies on an individual's sensory system and mind. Each person's experience may vary based on biological differences, cultural background, or personal context. However, perception also leans toward objectivity as it aims to assess and understand the external world, things that exist independently of humans' personal experiences. Contradiction is a crucial factor in the process of perception and cognitive development. When faced with contradictions, people are compelled to examine and consider various perspectives, thus broadening their understanding and shifting their views on the issue. Contradictions often arise when there are two or more opposing viewpoints. To resolve a contradiction, individuals must analyze more deeply, seek information and data to support their stance, or gain a better understanding of the opposing viewpoints. This encourages a deeper comprehension of the subject in the dimension of Hegel's dialectic. Limnati includes a section titled Dialectic as the Self-Fulfillment of Logic by Dieter Wandschneider, which offers an important perspective on analyzing the self-realization process of logic within Hegel's philosophy. Wandschneider explains dialectics as the self-movement and self-actualization of rational thought. He argues that Hegel views dialectic not merely as a methodological tool, but as an intrinsic structure and essence of thought. Wandschneider points out that the self-fulfillment of logic involves concepts not merely existing independently, but rather self-contradicting and self-negating to advance to a higher level. This process allows concepts to move forward and transcend their internal limitations. When humans analyze an issue from multiple perspectives, individuals must learn to evaluate arguments and identify weaknesses in their thinking. Critical thinking helps people become more objective and adopt a broader outlook instead of being confined to a single perspective. Contradiction encourages people to engage with different values, cultures, or ways of thinking. By understanding and accepting the new values, individuals expand their vision and gain a clear perception of life and humanity's diversity. In the nature of human conflicts, Alexander Luria suggests that contradiction can prompt people to recognize their limitations and foster personal growth. When individuals seek to resolve conflicts, they learn and adapt their viewpoints and behaviors. thereby developing new skills and improving their ability to adapt to their environment. In postmodern contexts, where concepts of power, art, and aesthetic values have become increasingly complex, this contradiction has become more prominent. Boris Groys argues that postmodern art does not attempt to resolve internal contradictions. Instead, it accepts and uses them as part of the artistic practice. For example, many postmodern artists create works that are satirical, ironic, or critical of power institutions. Yet, these very works are displayed and supported by those same power institutions, such as museums and galleries. It is precisely due to this contradiction that art becomes not only an aesthetic tool, but also an important political, social, and cultural space where power and freedom are continually challenged and redefined. To explore the contradictions in visual art, this essay will analyze the following works. Born in Lima, Nicolas studied in fine art in Beirut before moving to Europe, where he continued his studies. He viewed his works not as individual pieces but as an ever-expanding network of connections. The interaction between objects in human bodies in Nicolas Lama's both human ecologies becomes something dialectical, a type of action and reaction unfolding over time. But human ecologies is an installation composed of used everyday objects and organic materials such as bones, beehives, and coral, which Nicolas Lamas connects within an industrial refrigerator. This creates hybrid fossil from man-made and animal objects with plastic, one that defies time and weather, imprinting itself into the geological history of the planet. The materials are highly contradictory, yet they reveal similarity in form and context. In his work, the artist analyzes and deconstructs the relationship between humans and non-human objects, along with the related power structure that shape how humans perceive, interpret, and interact with their environment. The application of contradictory assemblage in his work allows him to challenge the perception of matter as a passive entity, a stance that is both symbolic and liberating. Everyday objects are combined in unexpected ways, an act that reconstructs human grammar as well as empower the essence of objects. In Nicolas' pieces, the active body of humans often engage with objects, sometimes separated by multiple layers of material information, aiming to foster objects within new systemic structures. Thus, a sense of human detachment emerges, emphasizing awareness of the physical dynamic that connects objects. As Art Power wrote, the physical form of an artwork may be very simple or even mundane, while the meaning it conveys is profoundly complex, deep, and philosophical. These installations reveal contradiction clearly, merging fiction, life, and stasis, thereby creating a communicative space between human linguistic perception and the forms of sensory activation. Like the section Dialectic as the Self-Fulfillment of Logic by Dieter Wandschneider, when the viewers confront contradiction, they perceive and examine different perspectives, thus broadening their understanding and shifting their perception of the issues. In short, Lama's work challenge the stability and perceptual biases that view matter and objects as passive. By assembling objects and material in contradictory ways, the intersections, the space in between, the transitional area between objects and the viewer's body, between concepts themselves, are crucial in his works. In this way, he expands viewers' perception of objects and matter, showing them as not passive but alive and filled with meaning in human perception. Nguyễn Quốc was born in 1989 in Vietnam. He graduated from Ho Chi Minh University of Fine Arts and primarily works in painting. In 2024, his work Flow was awarded the prestigious UOP Painting of the Year award. The piece Flow by artist Nguyễn Quốc explores two native materials, coal and rice powder, to depict the story of Vietnam's natural resources. When in coal symbolizes the role of the mining industry in the north, while rice powder represents the abundant agriculture of the Mekong Delta in the south. The artist combines these contrasting materials to create a contemporary ink painting with an abstract effect resembling the turrets of stalactite, emphasizing dialogue between black and white, darkness and light. This contrast goes beyond materials to convey a profound weight, where the work embodies a grand narrative about the impacts of the wet rice agriculture and heavy industry on natural landscapes and the customs of indigenous communities. It also seeks to explore the relationship between humans and nature, the flow of life, and the environmental influences on people. Additionally, Kuhn wishes to expand awareness about the flow not only of ecosystem but of human fragility in their living environment of time, memory, emotions, and psychology. The contradiction between the material connects not only with the environment but also to his inner side, just as Wandschneider and Hegel view dialectics as an intrinsic structure and nature of thought. Similarly, in the nature of human conflicts, Alexander Luria suggests that conflict can drive people to recognize their limits and encourage personal growth through a work that exists both as a material object and an abstract concept, and through the contradiction between raw material, the soft, malleable, shapeless quality of rice powder, and the hardness of coal. When Kuhn has prompted viewers to reconsider what they often overlook, it empowers the materials to communicate their meanings to the viewers, telling a story of labor and how human exploitation and use of these materials impact the surrounding ecosystem. Additionally, the work was exhibited at the prestigious Southeast Asian competition, a contest that represents both creative freedom and control by powerful institutions, which has shifted perception of material among viewers and art community in Vietnam. As Boris Groys wrote, it is precisely this contradiction between creative freedom and dependency on power institutions that make a work of art a complex, powerful entity that continues to challenge traditional definitions of art and power in society. Nguyễn Mạnh Hùng was born in Hanoi and graduated from Vietnam University of Fine Arts in 2002. Nguyễn Mạnh Hùng is also known for his role as an artistic director of Nha Sang Studio, a contemporary artist run art space in Hanoi founded in 1998. Through juxtaposing contradicting symbols, all about centers the concept of afterlife. Hùng interprets death as a journey where karma is the baggage carrying both the good and bad deeds of each person's life, hoping it will lead them to a realm that might not even exist. The work portrays scenes of frantic route clinging to the sacred gates of different religions, ritualistic objects, and solemn religious architecture, consider holy places to express reverence to deities. The works brought living obsession with heaven, a realm beyond human comprehension. Although most religions believe in an afterlife, each offers a unique interpretation of heaven and who may enter. The doctrines of these religions often describe heaven as a state rather than a specific place. Thus, death is inherently personal and unique. How people live is how people prepare for this journey and what awaits them on the other side. In summary, by juxtaposing contradicting images of ordinary people crowded alongside sacred objects like altars and temple gates from different countries and cultures, Nguyễn Mạnh Hùng has encouraged the Vietnamese public to engage with diverse values and cultures, opening new ways of perceiving. This allows viewers in Vietnam to gain fresh perspective on the living's preoccupation with heaven and fear of death, while also broadening their awareness of a variety of religious teachings across different countries and cultures. As Boris Groys suggests, this makes an artwork both concrete and abstract, existing in the real world while also occupying the realm of thought and symbolism. Furthermore, as Alexander Luria suggests in the nature of human conflicts can act as a catalyst, prompting individuals to recognize their limitations and encourage personal growth. When people seek to resolve contradictions, they learn, adjust their viewpoints and behaviors, develop new skills, and improve their ability to adapt to their surroundings. To address the research question, how have contradictions in visual art affected public perception in Vietnam from 2020 to the present? This essay demonstrates that contradictions represent the unity and struggle between opposing forces, playing a crucial role in dialectics. According to Boris Groys, contradiction enable art to transcend its aesthetic function and become a political, social, and cultural space where power and freedom are continuously challenged and redefined. Additionally, theory from Maund, Dieter Wandschneider, and Alexander Luria highlight that contradictions stimulate cognitive processes, compelling individuals to view issues from multiple perspectives and expand their understanding. Through works such as Nicholas Lama's book Human Ecologies, viewers are challenged to reconceptualize material, shifting from perceiving them as passive to recognizing them as dynamic entities imbued with meaning. When Vietnamese flow, with its juxtaposition of coal and rice powder, invites reflection on the relationship between human labor and the environment. Similarly, when homes all about through the contrast between mundane individuals and sacred symbols broadens the public perception of death and the afterlife and the diversity of religious doctrines. Contradictions in art are not negative but rather opportunity for exploration and growth. By embracing and applying them positively, contradictions can help individuals broaden their perspectives, gain deeper insights into the diversity of life, and develop a more objective and inclusive worldview. Art that incorporates contradictions serves not only as a medium for creativity but also as a bridge connecting the public to new values, cultures, and ways of thinking.